I was halfway up the stairs with a laundry bag biting into my shoulder when I heard Tommy call from the landing above. "I made another boat, Daddy." His voice bounced off the cracked walls like it had hope, even though the heat was barely kicking in and the hallway smelled like boiled onions and wet socks. I was 23, name's Landon Parker, living in a crooked third-floor walk-up in Corona, Queens, just me and my boy. The city doesn't give you breaks. It gives you noise, rot, and just enough light to think maybe tomorrow won't feel so heavy. I'd moved down from Delaware County after both my folks passed in the same awful year. Thought maybe New York would slap the grief off me. All it did was empty my wallet and fill it with rent receipts. Quick note, before we continue, share in the comments which city or country you're listening from. It helps us see where you're tuning in from and figure out the best time to post new stories. Thanks. Now let's get into it. I was working nights over in the Bronx, maintenance tech at a self-storage joint. Lights, locks, water leaks. If something broke, it was mine. Before that, 2 busted gigs at shady auto shops in Long Island City. Both bosses treated rain like a reason to cut hours. "No foot traffic," one said. I told him it wasn't a bakery. Got fired the next week. Money? Forget it. I tracked every penny in a dollar store notebook. Rent, Metro cards, school snacks, diapers, knockoff toothpaste. Some nights I skipped dinner and told myself I was teaching discipline. Truth was, I couldn't afford to be full. Vance Baker, my so-called best friend since high school, was crashing with his cousin in Astoria, still talking about big plans and easy flips. Always needed just 60, a quick 100, said he'd Venmo me when his hustle hit. Never did. His wife, Mia, barely looked at me when I stopped by. She blamed me for his stalled ambition, like the reason he hadn't made it big yet was 'cause I let him sit on my couch. Tommy's mom left when he was 2. Found some investment guy with a car service and leather seats. She dropped Tommy off one weekend like I was a shelter. Didn't even look back. I remember standing at the door with a diaper bag in one hand and a kid in the other, thinking, this is it. I'm all he's got. That winter came early, and it came hard. My coat had holes in both elbows, the zipper stuck, and it stank like cheap insulation. I hit a market on Roosevelt Avenue, hoping for something warm without breaking $40. Found a black work jacket, thick lining, scuffed sleeves, stitched up collar, 28 cash. The guy running the stall, older dude with kind eyes and cracked fingernails, wrapped it in newspaper like it was a gift. He said, "Don't worry, kid. We lose a lot in life, but sometimes miracles land in our lap. And remember, family ain't always blood." I nodded, pretending I wasn't holding on to that like it meant something. Truth? I needed it to mean something. I needed anything to mean something. That night, after I got Tommy into his rocket ship pajamas and tucked into the pullout, I stepped out onto the fire escape with the jacket. The air stung my face. Queens always smelled like exhaust and fried meat in winter. I pulled the coat tight and ran my fingers down the inside seam. That's when I felt it. Paper, not fabric. I froze, slid my hand back, slow, and pressed again. Definitely paper. I didn't say a word, just turned, went back inside, and grabbed the box cutter from the kitchen drawer. I slit the seam open with the box cutter, hands steady, heart not. The blade dragged through the lining like I was cutting skin. I reached in and felt the edge of paper, thin, stiff, folded tight. Pulled it out, slow. Just one scrap of cheap ruled notebook paper, jagged at the side like it was ripped in a hurry. Ink bled into the fibers, heavy strokes that pressed straight through. Please help. I've been taken. Basement. He makes me repair vintage clothes he sells. I saw a sign. 153. Quiet street. Trees behind. Think he killed others. Grace M. I read it once. Then again. Then I stood there staring at it like it might change if I blinked hard enough. My fingers went numb. I flipped the jacket inside out, dug through every inch of that lining. No cash, no photos, no address, just that note. Just that voice on the paper. I grabbed a sandwich bag from the kitchen drawer and slid the scrap inside. Then I took a picture on my cracked phone, just in case. Tommy was snoring on the pullout. I shook his shoulder and pulled on his coat. He blinked up at me, confused. "Are we getting hot chocolate?" he asked, rubbing his eyes. "After," I said, zipping him up. The air outside slapped me in the face. Wind tore down Roosevelt Avenue like it had somewhere to be. We rode the night bus to the precinct, sat quiet except for Tommy counting light poles. At the 110th precinct, the warmth inside felt fake, like microwaved soup. The front desk stunk of coffee left too long in the pot. The desk sergeant, gray mustache, pink face, barely looked up when I walked in. I told him what I found, showed him the bag. He glanced at it like I'd handed him a grocery list. "Yeah, kids write stuff like this all the time," he said. "We find that junk all over. People forget notebooks in thrift stores." "She wrote it in a jacket," I said. "Sewn in the lining. Somebody out there's holding her in a basement. She says he makes her fix clothes. She saw a sign with 153. Trees. Quiet street. She thinks he killed people." He exhaled like I was a minor inconvenience. "Listen, man, there's basements in every borough. Take it to Lost and Found if you feel guilty tossing it." My mouth stayed shut for a second. Then I stepped forward, kept my voice calm. "This ain't a prank. This ain't make-believe. This is a real living person. Read the handwriting. That's someone trying not to fall apart." Tommy tugged my jacket, and I realized I was breathing hard. The sergeant rolled his eyes and waved me toward the plastic chairs. So we sat. Tommy folded me an origami frog from a gum wrapper and whispered that frogs liked basements because they were cool and dark. I smiled, barely. "People don't," I said. We'd been sitting about 10 minutes when a younger detective walked past and did a double take. Dark coat, buzzed hair, maybe mid-30s. He looked sharp, but not tired, which made him stand out in there. He nodded at the bag in my hand. "What's that?" he asked. I stood up. "A note, sewn inside a coat lining. Someone begging for help." He held out his hand. I passed him the sandwich bag. He read it once, then again, and the way his brow tightened told me I wasn't nuts. He looked over at the sergeant. "You logged this?" The sergeant shrugged. "Guy found it in a jacket. Basement story." The detective didn't answer him. He just turned to me. "Start from the top," he said. "I'm Detective Calvin." I told him everything. Where I bought the coat. When. What the seller looked like. He pulled a notebook and started writing. Asked what stall I got it from. I gave him the exact corner, told him it was Roosevelt near 74th, past the produce guy, across from the churro cart. He listened all the way through. Didn't rush me. Didn't talk down. When I finished, he nodded and said, "We had a missing persons out of Westchester. Big media splash, then nothing. Name was Grace. Grace Mitchell. No ransom, no contact, no signs of running off. The family's been looking. This," he held up the bag. "This is something." I felt something click into place. Not hope exactly, just traction. "Do you believe it?" I asked. "I believe someone wrote it," he said. "And I believe it's not junk." Behind him, 2 other detectives smirked, like he was wasting his time. He ignored them and told me he'd make some calls. Cross-check markets. Check surveillance. "You don't throw away a thread just 'cause it's thin," he said. On the way out, Tommy squeezed my hand. "Is the girl gonna be okay?" I didn't sugarcoat. "I don't know, buddy, but we just made her odds better." At the bodega down the block, I called Vance, told him what happened, thinking maybe he'd get it. First thing out of his mouth was, "Dude, you should have filmed it. We could post it. Like, hero dad saves missing girl. That'd go viral in a day. Get a channel up, monetize it. I'll help." I hung up before he finished, bought Tommy the hot chocolate he asked for, 2 pumps of caramel. Back home, I tossed the laundry bag off the couch and slid the jacket under my bed. I sat on the edge, staring at the ceiling. Pipes hissed. Steam clanked. Somewhere below us, a baby started crying and didn't stop for a while. I lay down in my clothes, kept my boots on. The city kept making noise, but I held on to the quiet where I could. I was halfway through tightening a busted faucet in the women's restroom at the storage place when my phone buzzed hard in my back pocket. 6:42 a.m. I remember the time exactly because that call changed everything. It was Calvin. His voice was calm, but I heard the engine underneath it. "We found her," he said. "Grace Mitchell. Alive." I stood up so fast I cracked my head on the mirror. Didn't even flinch. Just wiped my hand on my jeans and said, "Where do you need me?" He told me to come into the precinct. No details on the phone. I called my boss and said the word family. That was the magic word. He just grunted and told me to cover my next shift. I took the train, eyes locked on the window, even when it went dark underground. Calvin didn't waste time when I walked in. He had the case file open on the desk, a photo of Grace clipped to the front with a paperclip like it was any other sheet. It wasn't. "The guy's name is Josh," Calvin said. 45. Real name Joshua Colton. Ran a little patchwork scam selling refurbished vintage, basically stolen clothes fixed up and moved at flea markets, upstate and out here in the city. "How long?" I asked. "She disappeared 8 months ago," he said. "He took her when she was 24, found her this morning in a basement in Delaware County." I stared at him. "Delaware County? You're kidding." "Nope," he said. "You grew up around there, right?" "Yeah, that's home," I said. My throat went tight for a second. What was she doing all that time? Calvin shifted in his seat. Sewing, sleeping, eating when he let her. He had a bucket for a toilet, a cot, one of those old pedal machines. He kept it basic, routine, nothing flashy. We think he was trying to stay small, keep her alive long enough to use her, then squeeze the family for money. He slid the jacket across the desk, the one I'd found at the market. She sewed notes into linings, collars, buttonholes. Most of them were tossed or resold before anyone saw a thing. Yours made it through. He pointed at the 153 from the note. Turns out that's not a street number. It's a mile marker on Route 153. About 8 minutes from the shack we found her in. That got us a search radius. From there, it was property records, water bills, and a guy who'd once been busted for petty theft in Oneonta. Same name, same van. Matched the tags to a flea market stall in Kingston. Calvin leaned forward. We pulled up just before dawn. 3 units, warrant in hand. He tried to play dumb, told us he hadn't seen her, but she was downstairs, behind a fake wall. That wall came down fast. My chest was hot and cold all at once. She okay? She's alive, malnourished, shaken, eyes like she'd been kept in a jar. But she's talking, and she asked where the jacket came from. I couldn't think of what to say to that, so I kept quiet. Calvin just nodded and patted the folder. Your name's in the report. You'll probably get a call from her people. An hour later, that call came. Lawyer, pressed suit, smooth voice, called himself Andrew something. Said Mr. Felix Mitchell would like a word. Arranged a meeting at the hospital, neutral room. I wasn't sure what to wear, so I wore clean jeans and the same boots I'd fixed pipes in for 2 years. Felix Mitchell walked in like he'd stepped out of a corner office in Midtown. Dark wool coat, 1,000-yard stare, but there was nothing slick about the way he looked at me. Not anger, not distance, just grief and something deeper. He held out both hands, grabbed mine like I was a rope and he'd been drowning. I'm Felix, he said. I want to thank you for what you did. No need, I told him. I just found a note. He didn't let go right away. That note saved my daughter. That note cracked something open. I didn't even know what it was at first. Thought maybe it was some weird prank. It wasn't, he said. His eyes didn't blink much. It was her last shot. He let go and sat down across from me. I've got a lot of money. I've got lawyers and press contacts and companies in 7 states. None of that did what you did. I shifted in my seat. It wasn't just me. Detective Calvin listened. He made the calls, pushed it through. He nodded once. I've already thanked him. I'm here for you. I'm just a dad who buys jackets at street markets. He smiled at that. That's what makes it stick. No angle, no ask. Just saw something and did the right thing. Wasn't sure it was the right thing, I admitted, but I couldn't walk away. That's the part I care about. We sat for a minute in that quiet room while the world buzzed beyond the glass. Finally, he asked, "What's your situation? Work? Family?" I gave it to him straight. Storage job in the Bronx. 1 kid, 5 years old. No savings. Rent late 2 months. Everything balanced on hustle and timing. He just nodded again. No pity, just calculation. I take care of my own, he said. I believe in that. Later that day, I got the full breakdown from Calvin. Josh had been building toward extortion. He had a folder of news clippings about Felix, drafts of emails asking for money in vague terms. Some even tried to sound like Grace herself wrote them. Never sent. Probably still working up the nerve. DA's got enough to bury him, Calvin said. Unlawful confinement, coercion, exploitation, criminal impersonation, intent to defraud. It'll stick. He'll rot. He paused. You know what you did, right? I looked at him. Found a note in a busted coat. He smiled. You showed up. Before I left, he handed me a copy of the evidence log with my name on it. Said the jacket was cleared for release. I took it home and laid it flat on the table like it was something sacred. Tommy asked if it was the magic coat that saved the girl. I told him maybe it was. Tommy was drawing rockets on the back of a grocery list when the wire hit. $11,960. Felix's lawyer sent me the breakdown with a quiet, as agreed. Every cent aimed with purpose. 2 months back rent. 1 emergency bill from when Tommy split his chin on a sidewalk grate. The last chunk knocked out the credit card I'd been paying $15 at a time for 3 years. I sat at the table and stared at the screen until my coffee went cold. Then a second wire came in. Same sender, different note. Thank you payment. Pre-cleared, tax sorted. $142,000. Not a handshake. Not a blank check. It came with documents, a signature line, and a message from the lawyer. Clean and above board. I signed. Pride's nice in theory, but it doesn't pay for daycare, groceries, or breathing room. I signed because it meant I could stop counting rice and start counting time. I left the storage job the next morning. Told my boss in person. He didn't blink, didn't ask why. Just said, your slot'll be open if you want it back. He meant it. In this city, that meant something. By the end of the week, I was working remote, piecing together used car condition reports for regional dealers. I'd gotten the lead through a guy who used to bring his Civic into the Queen's shop, needed help documenting VINs, verifying damage, calling sellers who flaked. I was decent at it, knew what panel rust looked like under fresh paint. I worked from the kitchen table in my boxers while Tommy stacked juice boxes into pyramids. The pay was better than expected. Nothing flashy, but enough to hold us up. I didn't care if it sounded boring. Glamour doesn't pack lunch boxes or scrape Play-Doh out of the carpet. We moved to a 2-bedroom in Woodside. Real windows. No roaches. Tommy got a bunk bed he didn't need and a rug with a road printed on it for his toy cars. I still woke up some nights thinking I was behind on rent, panicked in the dark, heart racing, like money was still chasing me down the hallway. First week in the new place, Vance showed up with a 6-pack, 3/4 grin locked and loaded, called me Mr. Big Shot, kicked off his shoes like he still lived there, and flopped onto the couch with a deep sigh. He clinked his bottle against mine. Told you, man. We were always meant to eat. You invest. I execute. I laughed like it was a joke. He didn't laugh back. Mia came by the next night with a foil tray of brownies and a warm hug that lingered a second too long. She sat at the counter asking real gentle questions. How much was left after rent? How steady was the new gig? what kind of stuff I wanted to do next. I said I didn't know yet. She smiled and nodded like she understood, but her eyes kept scanning the room like she was building a budget off what she saw. A few days later, I bought Vance a used laptop for $380. Nothing fancy, just enough to get him started. He said he had a plan, reseller funnels, affiliate margins, content that scales. I asked him what kind of content. He said, just wait, trust the process. 2 days later, he'd posted 2 memes and a picture of himself in sunglasses captioned, "The grind chooses you." I didn't say a word. Then Daniela Mora walked into my life like the beginning of a new chapter. We met at a car show in Jamaica. She was helping her cousin with a vendor tent, selling microfiber cloths and ceramic sprays. She had bright eyes, fast words, and a laugh that rolled right through my ribs. She told me I looked like someone who didn't take shortcuts. I told her I didn't have time to. She said I had grit. She said that was rare. I believed her, because grit was all I had left for too long. We started seeing each other. Coffee in Astoria, late-night takeout, 2 weekends walking the aisles of AutoZone for no real reason. She knew business like I knew brake rotors, talked about value chains and customer conversion like it was second nature. When she pitched the online storefront for curated auto accessories, I listened. She showed mock-ups, sales funnels, supplier lists. She needed a test, $3,750 to lock in domain, hosting, and launch inventory. I said yes. Not because I was trying to impress her, because it felt like a small risk. I had room to breathe now. Around the same time, Vance started making little comments. Subtle stuff. "Danny said you're going big, bro." Or, "She told me you're finally leaning in." Stuff I hadn't said to her yet. I wanted to ignore it. People talk, people exaggerate. That's what I told myself. But it crawled up my spine like a chill. One night over dinner, I asked Danny if she'd told anyone about the money. She smiled and said, "Only in general." I let it drop, but the knot in my stomach stayed. Meanwhile, Calvin texted me once. Just once. "Grace is stabilizing. Therapy. Press settled down." I told him thanks again. He answered, "You did the brave part, showing up." That stuck with me more than it should have. Because I wasn't feeling brave. I was feeling watched. Orders didn't flood in like Danny promised. Her soft launch just quietly swallowed money like it was starving. The site was live, sure. Slick design, full catalog, buzzwords in every headline. But clicks didn't mean carts, and carts didn't mean sales. I asked how long it would take to see traction. She smiled and said it was standard customer acquisition burn. I nodded like I knew what that meant, even though my gut already did. It still drains cash. Whether you're branding or bleeding. The next week, Vance pulled me into a diner on 31st Avenue. Vinyl booths, weak coffee, same laminated menu from 10 years ago. He waited until my cup was half full before hitting me with it. "I got a line on something tight," he said. "Phone flipping pipeline, clean inventory. We hold for 72, relist, profit margin around 30%. Just need float money." I sipped my coffee and didn't blink. "How much?" $5,600 now. Another 8 by the end of the month. That number rolled off his tongue too clean. He didn't check notes, didn't guess. That wasn't ballpark. That was budgeted. "How on earth do you know those numbers?" I asked. He grinned, leaned back, arms wide like I was being silly. "Come on, man. We're family. I know your rhythm. I can tell when you're flush." I paid the check and left a tip just to stop talking. That weekend, Mia invited me and Tommy over for lasagna. She said it was just dinner. Nothing heavy. But the way she smiled told a different story. She wore makeup like she was expecting news. Vance played it cool, talking about hustle and trends, but his eyes were watching mine like he was waiting for me to say yes, without saying yes. When Mia stepped into the hallway to take a call, I caught the glow of her phone lighting her face like she'd seen a ghost. Her voice dropped low, too quiet to hear words. She didn't look surprised, though. Just tired. Monday night, Danny made dinner at my place. Stir fry, wine, the kind of music that feels like it's saying, everything's fine. We sat close on the couch. She nuzzled into my shoulder and whispered, "If we get another 25,000 in, we're real. I'm talking press kits, influencer boxes, branded shipping. That's when we hit." I didn't answer right away. She brushed her lips against my neck and said, "Men who hesitate lose markets." It was meant to be sexy. All I felt was cornered. That night, Tommy made her a paper crane, his favorite color, red, and wrote "For Danny" in crooked letters on the wing. She smiled and said she loved it, then left it sitting on the counter next to her purse. When Tommy asked why it wasn't in her bag, I didn't have an answer. I did, though. A day later, I was updating some records on my tablet when I noticed a DM icon I didn't recognize. I clicked, and my stomach dropped. It was from Vance, sent to Danny's handle. Casual tone, short message. "He's liquid right now. Push him past 10. I'll warm him up. You're welcome." No question, no hesitation. Just a plan. I stared at that screen for a long time. Then I took a screenshot, emailed it to myself, and moved it to a secure folder labeled "Paperwork," because that's what it was now, evidence. The next day, I waited until Tommy was watching cartoons and asked Danny straight up, "You talked to Vance about my accounts?" She blinked, looked me in the eye, then said, "Only in general, nothing specific. You know how he talks." Which wasn't no, and wasn't enough. That same night, Mia texted me by mistake, or maybe on purpose. A voice memo meant for someone else. Her sister, I think. I played it 3 times just to be sure. If he gives her that 25, we're covered till tax season. Covered. I didn't call anyone, didn't blow up, didn't shout. I just went quiet. For 2 days, I worked my reports, made grilled cheese, packed lunches, walked Tommy to school and back. I kept the machine running and let the noise shake itself loose. On the 3rd day, Danny came by with a tray of samples and a new sales deck. Bright colors, charts, fancy fonts. She smiled like we were at the top of something instead of halfway down. I poured her coffee, sat her down, and said, "No." She blinked. "No to what?" "No to the 25,000. No to any of it." Her smile fell so fast it felt rehearsed. "Then we're misaligned," she said. Her voice was suddenly formal, like we were standing in a trade show booth, not my kitchen. She stood, gathered her things, didn't say goodbye to Tommy, even though he was sitting 5 feet away gluing popsicle sticks into something that looked like a bridge. She left the paper crane on the counter. I watched her go. Didn't move. Just stood there and let the silence roll in like fog. Tommy looked up and said, "She forgot her bird." I picked it up, folded the wing back into place, and slid it into the drawer with the spare keys. I didn't slam the door when Danny left. Didn't rage or break a glass. I just stood there in the quiet and felt the last piece of the city slide off me like an old skin. And that was it. I was done. The next morning, I gave notice on the apartment, called my boss to let him know I'd still be working remote but from upstate, and packed slow. Tommy helped by stuffing his paper boats into a shoebox and asking if squirrels lived near our new house. I said yes, and he asked if they wore jackets in the snow. I told him maybe scarves. The black jacket went into a box with Tommy's drawings and the crane Danny left behind. I taped it shut and labeled it "Keep," like that would make the memories inside behave. On a cold Tuesday, I drove north. No music, no rush. Just the steady hum of the road and my kid asleep in the back seat with his stuffed raccoon on his lap. I passed the sign for Delaware County and didn't flinch. Past the gas station where I bought my first pack of gum with a crumpled dollar. Past the dirt road where my dad taught me how to change a tire. Past the spot where I wrecked my bike trying to impress a girl who didn't even remember it happened. The house sat like it had been holding its breath for me. Same crooked porch, same flaking trim, same roof that never quite stopped leaking. Probate was done, The deed had my name on it, and Felix's thank you gift had let me square up the back taxes and buy a few tools. The porch sagged like a tired back. Gutters drooped at the corners. The wind chimes still hung where Mom left them, tangled up like they'd been in a fight with the sky and lost. But it was mine, and I was staying. That first night, I found the breaker box, flipped on the furnace, and made grilled cheese while Tommy danced in his socks across the hardwood like it was a skating rink. We slept on a mattress on the floor with 3 blankets and a flashlight for comfort. By sunset the next day, there was a knock at the door. I opened it to find a woman holding a steaming casserole in one arm and a paper bag in the other. She was about 60, wore a cardigan that looked hand-knit, and had eyes like she'd seen more winters than she let on. "I'm Verna Kincaid," she said. "Your folks were good people. Welcome home." I stood there dumb for a second before remembering my manners. "Landon Parker. Thanks. You didn't have to." "Of course I did," she cut in. "You got a kid, don't you? No boy should eat frozen meals 3 nights straight." She handed me the bag. "Apples. Local." That was that. She didn't wait for small talk. Just gave a nod and walked back down the steps like she'd been delivering casseroles since the Nixon administration. I set up my desk near the front window, where the view was nothing but maple trees and the occasional squirrel Tommy liked to name. I wrote my reports in peace. No sirens, no stomping upstairs neighbors, just birds, the occasional creak, and the radiator rattling like it was telling secrets. Tommy settled into a routine. Paper planes in the morning, leaf piles in the afternoon, hot cocoa at 4, and knock-knock jokes at dinner. He had one about a banana and a chicken that killed me every time. I pretended not to know the punchline, and he pretended it was brand new. I fixed the porch rail with lumber from a yard in Walton. Took a weekend to patch the roof. Learned the kind of tired that sits in your bones without turning into anger. That kind of tired felt honest. The kind you earn. Vance called 12 times in 3 days. I let most of them go to voicemail. When I finally picked up, he jumped straight in. "Bro, I know you're cooling off, but I got something real this time. Not fluff. I'm not funding anything," I said. "I wish you well, but I'm done." There was a pause. Then his voice turned sharp. "You're a traitor? You forget who believed in you?" He hung up before I could reply. I let the echo sit in the room for a second, then went back to sanding the back door. The handle stuck every time it got cold. I wanted it smooth. Later that week, Mia texted me separately. Said, "You ever see any of Vance's receipts?" I didn't bite. I just replied, "I've got my own receipts." That was enough. Most nights, the house creaked and shifted like it was stretching after a long nap. I'd lie in bed and think about that jacket, about Grace, about the man who hurt her, and the people who didn't see it until it was almost too late. I remembered what the seller at the market said, his eyes soft under that battered cap. "Don't worry, kid. We lose a lot in life, but sometimes miracles land in our lap. And remember, family ain't always blood." Back then, I nodded like it was just talk. Now, lying in a house full of second chances and half-fixed problems, I believed him more with each passing day. The knock didn't sound urgent, just steady. I opened the front door expecting Mrs. Kincaid with another apple pie or a roofing contractor I forgot I called. Instead, there was a gray Subaru idling near the gate, and standing at the bottom of my steps was a young woman in a knit cap and a black coat 2 sizes too big. "Is this where Landon Parker lives?" she asked, voice low like she didn't want to interrupt the day. I didn't answer right away. I'd seen her face before, on missing posters, on news crawls, even in a press conference clip when they first found her. But this version was quieter, softer, human. "Grace," I said. She nodded once, pulled the sleeves over her hands. "I'm sorry to show up like this. I didn't know who else to ask. I need quiet. Not the kind they sell with spa music and blackout curtains. The kind where people forget your name on purpose." I didn't ask how she found me. She probably didn't tell anyone either. She pointed toward the back of the property. I saw online there's a little shed. If it's dry, I can rent it. A month, tops. I'll clean it up. I'll stay out of your way. I need a place that doesn't smell like microphones. The shed's not insulated, I told her. You'd freeze before morning. I'll manage. I shook my head. You won't. Come in. I've got a guest room. She hesitated, looked down at her boots like she was checking for permission. That's too much. It's not. She followed me in without another word. I gave her the room across from Tommy's, cleared the top drawer, handed her a towel, and told her I'd make chili. Tommy peeked out from behind the fridge, one sock on, hair sticking out like a crown of static. That's Grace, he whispered, like she was a TV character come to life. I nodded. He ran off, came back 5 minutes later holding a folded paper boat with her name scribbled in orange marker. Here, he said, handing it to her like it was treasure. It floats if you don't poke it. She crouched to meet him eye level and smiled, really smiled, the kind that starts slow and cracks something open. I'll keep it safe, she said. The next afternoon I found them on the porch swing. She was helping him sound out truck and tree from a library book. When he got them right, she clapped and said he was already smarter than most grown men. At dinner, she pushed beans around her plate before finally saying, Therapy's like running in place. Everyone wants to hear you're healing, but nobody wants to hear how. Strangers tell me I'm brave, call me strong, then ask what brand of mascara I was wearing when I got rescued. I didn't say anything. She didn't need answers. She needed air. She added, One guy told me I should write a book. Another said I should run for office. I just want to sleep. Sleep's the only luxury worth paying full price for, I said. She looked at me like that was the first honest thing anyone had told her in weeks. Later that night, she sat at the kitchen table holding an old thrift store sweater she'd picked up in town. Showed me the inside seam where she'd started a stitch out of habit, just muscle memory from all those months underground. Her fingers trembled halfway through. She put the needle down and looked at her hands like they belonged to someone else. I don't want to be that girl again, she said. You're not. At night, she'd walk the yard slow, head down, counting breaths, boots crunching frostbitten leaves like she needed to hear something break. I left the porch light on and pretended I was tightening something that squeaked just to be nearby. One night she didn't say anything, just came in and set the paper boat from Tommy on the windowsill. I got a text from Calvin a few days after she showed up. No hello, no small talk. Glad she found a quiet place. You're a good man. I didn't reply. He didn't ask where she was. I didn't offer. Felix called once, late, around 10. I stepped outside to take it, the cold biting into my shirt. His voice was steady, but careful. She reached out to her sister. That's all I know. I don't need details. I just wanted to say thank you. Again. She's safe, I said. That's what matters. He paused. Then, no press. Please. Of course. I could hear the relief in his exhale. Not because she was gone, but because he hadn't lost her again in public. That mattered more than whatever headlines they could milk. The town didn't know who she was. I didn't tell. Folks waved like they always did, dropped off eggs, asked if the new girl liked cider. She told them her name was G. That's all. No last name. No history. They took her word for it, and that was the best gift anyone had given her. One morning, I passed by the porch swing and saw her dozing with a book in her lap and the sun hitting her face just right. She looked like someone who'd finally heard silence long enough to believe it. Grace was still asleep on the porch swing when the email came in. Subject line, "One last try." From Danny. I clicked it with a pit in my chest, already knowing the flavor of what was inside. She'd attached a new pitch deck, brighter colors, more buzzwords, and at the bottom, in soft italics, "I miss us." I didn't reply. A week later, my phone buzzed while I was grabbing canned beans at the market in town. Mia. I hadn't heard from her in weeks. Don't hang up, she said. Her voice was tight, like she was holding something back. He's in deeper than I knew. Vance, he's been feeding Danny everything. Everything. I didn't say anything, just waited. I found messages, she said. Full breakdowns. Your payments, your address, even your schedule. Like he's her business manager or something. She sent the screenshots without me asking. One showed Vance spelling out how much I'd transferred into Danny's test launch. Another listed Tommy's school drop-offs like it was part of a logistics plan. There were bullet points. Actual bullet points. It didn't sting. It burned. That night I called Vance. New York's a one-party consent state, and I knew exactly what I was doing. He picked up like nothing was wrong. Yo, man, glad you finally called. Thought maybe we could... Been quite a ride, huh? I said, calm. Yeah, well, you needed a push, bro. I nudged. That's what family does. Mia's too simple to get it, but... I ended the call mid-sentence, saved the recording, and dropped it into a folder on my laptop labeled fence posts. Then I sent him a final text. I'm done. Don't contact me again. Blocked. Gone. The same week, I got a letter from an Albany law office representing Tommy's mother. She wanted to revisit custody based on material changes in financial status and living conditions. I'd been expecting something like that. I just didn't think it would come gift-wrapped in legal letterhead. I called a family attorney in Oneonta the same day, handed over every text message from the year she left. I can't do this, Landon. You handle it. I need space. They were time-stamped, preserved, backed up twice. My attorney drafted a simple reply, offered a structured parenting plan, specific weekends, holidays, pick up at the county line. She didn't take it. Not a word back. I spent the rest of that week pretending to focus on VIN reports and tire conditions while my jaw stayed clenched for hours at a time. I didn't sleep right, didn't eat right. Just kept thinking, they all think I'm the mark, the easy win, the guy with the soft no. Grace saw the envelope and the legal pad and the stack of copied texts on the table one afternoon. She didn't ask right away. She waited until Tommy was asleep and I was rinsing dishes. You need anything? She said from the doorway. I'm fine. She stepped closer. I didn't ask that. I dried my hands and stared out the window like I'd find peace in the night sky. Then I exhaled hard and said, I just don't want my kid turned into a pawn. That's all. Grace didn't press. She just nodded like she understood every inch of that fear. The next day, we took Tommy to the library in Delhi. He whispered too loud during story time and made the librarian flinch. Grace shushed him, then shushed herself, and started laughing so hard she had to cover her mouth. For 30 straight minutes, I forgot courtrooms even existed. The day after that, Danny tried one last time. A new email, more polished than the first. It opened with flattery, slid into opportunity talk, and ended with another attachment labeled Collab Roadmap. I didn't even open it, just forwarded it to Mia. Her reply came back in under a minute. One single thumbs up. That night, Mrs. Kincaid showed up with a crock pot of soup, 2 bags of groceries, and a line I didn't know I needed. If they wanted a war, she said, setting the bag down on my porch, they picked the wrong porch. She didn't wait for a reply, just adjusted her scarf and left. I believed her. I filed the papers on a Tuesday morning, right after dropping Tommy at school. Small claims court, Delaware County, $1,800, marked loan in my old notepad, backed by text messages and transfer receipts from last September. Vance had called it a short float back then. I called it a lie with an invoice, certified mail, clean and cold, just like I wanted. He settled the day before the hearing, $900 cash and 2 power tools he'd borrowed indefinitely, when I still answered his calls. I signed the receipt, filed the confirmation, and let that be the end of it. It wasn't about the money. It was about me not being a doormat anymore. I texted Mia the receipt. She answered with 2 words. Thank you. but it read like she'd been holding her breath for months and finally let it out. Work picked up. My reports got tighter. I flagged a flood title vehicle for one of the regional dealers, caught the signs early, saved them over $7,000 in paperwork and damage headaches. Word spread. By mid-month, one of the larger lots put me on a retainer, $1,250 a month for priority calls and first-look assessments. I didn't ask for it. They offered. I accepted. Tommy got a used sled and a new snow shovel with a padded grip. He called it the Digger. Grace found a little rhythm of her own. She started helping the church shop mend donated sweaters. No charge, no schedule, just came in, fixed what she felt like, and left when she wanted. She didn't need a paycheck. She needed to choose. Some days, when a door slammed too hard or a truck backfired, she froze like her bones turned to ice. Other days, she'd crack a joke in the middle of folding laundry that made me spit coffee into the sink. Healings both. I didn't read that anywhere. I watched it. One night I got a text from Calvin. Just one line. Josh pled out. Long sentence. She won't have to testify. I sat on the porch with that message lit up in my palm for a long time, not moving, not breathing heavy, just letting that sentence settle where the fear used to sit. In April, I planted tomatoes behind the shed. Might have been too early, but I needed to get my hands in the dirt. Tommy stuck popsicle sticks in the rows, drew faces on them, gave each one a name. This one's Commander Sauce. He's in charge of all the tomatoes. The black jacket stayed on the hook by the front door. Still smelled like storage dust and winter air. I wore it on cold mornings, out of habit, thumb brushing the seam like a scar I didn't want gone. One morning, Grace stood by the window, sipping tea and watching the yard wake up. She said, "I've been thinking about June. Maybe I'll try somewhere near a river, smaller than here, just me. No internet for a bit." I nodded. "You don't need my permission." "I know," she said, quiet but firm. Neither of us moved for a moment. The floor creaked once. Somewhere outside, a crow called like it was late for something. Then I turned back to my screen and she went to feed the kettle again. And that was all we needed to say. I'm 56 now, telling you about a year that hit the reset button on my life, because a scrap of paper hid in a black jacket, and I didn't shrug. I didn't cash it in. I didn't turn it into headlines. I just followed where it pointed and kept showing up. Back then, one warm evening that smelled like rain, Grace sat on the porch steps with Tommy between us, folding a paper boat out of thick construction paper. She was teaching him how to double the seams so it didn't collapse in the bird bath like the others. "Gotta crease it like you mean it," she said, tapping the fold. "See? Now it floats." Tommy beamed like he'd invented the whole thing. She glanced at me over the top of his head. "My therapist says I should try the city again. Controlled exposure. Ease back in. She says it's a smart plan." I nodded but didn't rush to answer. She added, "My dad's supportive. Gentle even. But his worry hangs off him like a coat that doesn't fit anymore." "You don't have to prove anything to anybody," I said. "Not even to a plan." She stared out at the garden for a while, arms wrapped around her knees. "Then what are you proving, out here fixing porches and writing about busted Camrys?" "That my kid can sleep through the night," I said. "That I get to choose who gets my time. That quiet isn't cowardice. It's freedom." My phone buzzed once. A photo from Mia. Tommy, covered in flour, next to a half-baked blueberry pie. Underneath the message, "Things are calmer." I let it sit. I just smiled and slid the phone back into my pocket. Danny hadn't tried anything in months. Vance stopped calling. That's the thing with takers. They go where it's warm until it isn't. Then they move on like they were never there. Grace leaned back on her hands and looked at the tomato plants starting to reach. "You think there's room for sunflowers?" "I've got room for anything you want to see stand tall." She stayed the rest of the summer. Took a part-time job at the library in town under a different last name. No one asked questions. She learned where the good shade was. the kind that moved with you when you shifted just enough. Tommy started calling her G one afternoon and never stopped. I didn't correct him. He named people the way kids do. Honest, simple, and earned. I never once turned the story into clicks or a headline. Never monetized it. Never played hero. The closest I came to revenge was telling the truth to the right people at the right time and refusing to open the door to the wrong ones. One morning, not long after the first sunflower bloomed, I found a note tucked behind the screw where the black jacket hung by the door. Just a slip of paper folded clean, one sentence written in tight, deliberate ink. Sometimes we get found twice. I didn't move it. Just left it there, hidden but not forgotten, where I could brush it with my fingertips every time I stepped outside to start the day. That's my ending, if you need one. A kid laughing at a paper boat that finally floats. A woman who breathes easier. A porch that holds us all without asking questions. And a man who finally learned how to say no without flinching. The city's still loud where it's loud. Up here, the porch light is enough. I didn't win a prize, didn't get famous, but I chose this life. And that's the kind of revenge I was after. Hey, real quick before you scroll, let me ask you this. Have you ever had to cut someone out? Not because you stopped caring, but because they kept crossing a line you didn't draw loud enough the first time? If you've got hype, tap it now to boost this story and help it reach the people who need it. Don't forget to like and subscribe. It's just one click, but it means the world to us. And drop a comment, even just good story, or tell me where it hit home. I read everyone. Love you guys.